Kohler Smart Toilets introduce a new standard of design and cleanliness, sculptural forms, intuitive technology, and total personalization with integrated warm water cleansing, heated seats, and warm air dryers. For peace of mind and convenience, there are touchless lids, seats, flush, and a self-sanitizing bidet wand. Now you can even use voice commands with Numi 2.0, featuring built-in Amazon Alexa. Explore the complete lineup at kohler.com/smarttoilets and discover what you've been missing.
Yeah. You know you need protein to fuel results, but it's not easy when you're drinking the same bland, chalky shake every day. Stop punishing yourself and get to GNC for the best protein in the game, including all the hottest brands and crave-worthy flavors that'll keep you coming back for more. We're talking protein that legit tastes like cookies, your favorite cereals, indulgent desserts, and more. So bust out of your protein rut and actually look forward to those shakes with unbeatable protein at unbeatable prices. Fuel your fitness with protein at GNC. Yeah.
If you travel for work, you know to pack 2 suits. Business and swim. You know with your Delta SkyMiles Business Amex card, buying that plane ticket for a business trip can get you closer to medallion status. You know that a meeting in Montana means visiting almost every national park.
Yellowstone? Check.
Because you're the chief excursion officer. It's why you're a Delta SkyMiles Platinum Business American Express card member. If you travel, you know. Terms apply. Visit go.amex/business.
How's it going? And welcome to episode 146 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. You can follow the pod on the Twitter at On the Wire Pod. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me at 80Grade. That's all spelled out. Of course, Kevin Hasting is at Hasting Kevin on the Twitter. And we are back once again in January. It's like, I don't know. I'm probably the only one that feels like this. Like, I understand that things are getting closer, but I don't feel like they're any closer than we were last week. I'm at this point in January where it's just going at a snail's pace, Kevin. It's like spring training can't come soon enough. It's like I want it to be tomorrow. All I'm doing is hanging my hat on the fact that we have PitchCon at the end of the month. Like, all right, great. Just reaching out to the next baseball mecca of a space that I can. And right now that's PitchCon at the end of the month. So I don't know how you're feeling about it. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well, Adam. Yeah, PitchCon 2 weeks away. Can't wait. I'm the opposite. I feel like all of a sudden I feel behind. I feel like I'm behind on everything. I start thinking I was double checking my flights to Vegas, my room reservations in Vegas, double checking on that just yesterday. And that's only 2 months away. So yeah, all of a sudden I'm feeling like, gosh, all these things I said I was going to do this off season, I really need
running out of time to do it. Yeah.
Right. And I brought it up last week at the end of the show. And I think that was kind of the wake up call, even for myself. I thought that, I've been keeping up on things throughout the off season and doing a few drafts here and there and updating all my stuff, getting it where I want to be. And now I'm thinking, wow, I have 2 months, maybe less, before I really need all of this to be done.
Yeah, that's fair point. That's fair point. You know what it is too? Is I think we've gone now a week and a half without being actively participating in one of our listener leagues. So I think all I really need is to start activating another 12-teamer just to get it filled really quick and get that going, because I'm not in a draft right now, and that's weird.
Exactly. I've been tempted a couple of times. Yeah. So I did sign up for the NFBC Champions League.
I saw that.
So
all right.
I have a couple of to be determined draft times, the online championship and the draft champions. I was really tempted to jump in an online championship a couple of nights ago. I decided to wait, but I think I am going to get a DC going and get that knocked out, and then we're kind of in between, right? Between waiting until we know everything, and drafting early when there can be some really big values. Kind of the best of both worlds right now. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and knock that DC out here shortly, and then it's time to get another listener league going. Shout out to Bubba and Ryan Bloomfield.
Yes.
They got some listener leagues going on that I'm gonna hop in. I think you seemed a little interested as well.
I threw my review down. That was their caveat. You gotta go give them a review on I believe on Apple Pod. I don't think it matters. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. You know what? Just listen to their pod. And
exactly. That's the only place they've talked about it. I hope we don't get in trouble for this.
Yeah, well, we're pushing them to listen to the show. You guys should be doing that
exactly.
already. If you're listening to our show and you're not listening to theirs, I'm not,
something's wrong. Yeah.
You're doing something wrong. Yeah. So go listen to them. But they're doing auctions, and that is that on NFPC, which is really cool because I have not dipped my toe into that aspect of the platform yet. And so at that, just like ours, at the
exactly
the low price point, easy access to try that out, and that'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully, I can get in one of those.
I have a feeling I'll be doing the online auction championship drafts next season after dipping toes in theirs at the lower price point. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, we let's get into it then. We got a couple of news items. It's not as deep as it has been in previous episodes, but there's still plenty to talk about. Still signings happening. No trades that I could tell, at least not worth talking about right now. All right, let's start with one of the bigger signings of the day that happened most recently. I think it was as of yesterday, as we're recording this on Wednesday. And that is, of course, Shota Imanaga coming over and signing with the Chicago Cubs, not the Giants, not the Red Sox, not the Yankees. A whole lot of back and forth on Twitter about that. A lot of upset Giants fans. Sorry, Bubba. But, Sarah Sanchez out there probably pretty happy about the signing. Jen Hoyer actually doing something this offseason for the Cubs. And he'll presumably be, top 3 starter in that rotation for the Cubs. Very interesting contract as well. As I look it over, Jesse Rogers reporting that it's an interesting opt-out opportunity after the second year. So it's a 4-year deal with the opportunity of becoming a 5-year deal, possibility of being a 2-year deal with a whole lot of different opt-out options, both for the Cubs and for Imanaga. And it would be behoove of me not to remind everybody, as Nick Pollock has pointed out a couple times, you can't spell Imanaga without spelling out I'm an AGA, or an ace is going to ace. So what do you have that kind of expectation as Imanaga comes over and transitions into Major League Baseball for the first time, getting, in between $50 and $60 million for 4 years? You'd expect him at least to be in, SP3 range. How are you expecting him to produce in his first season?
I'm always concerned with guys' first year, and sometimes even a couple of years, coming over, adjustments, new culture, new home, all that kind of thing. I don't know if this really does carry any weight or not, but in my mind, it does help a little bit that he's older. He's a few years older than Yamamoto. I think he'll be 31 years old as the season goes on for 2024. In my mind, hopefully that helps him out a little bit. So yeah, I think, and like you alluded to, hats off to the Cubs, I think. And unless it's like the Yamamoto situation where their camp came up with seemingly all the deferred money Yamamoto wanted, this is pretty unique. As you said, the Cubs can add a year, but it costs them $27 million to add that year. Yamamoto at the same time they have that opportunity can opt out. And I think that's after both seasons 2 and 3. So yeah, I think this is probably a nice spot for him. Hopefully he's comfortable, little older. He led the league in strikeouts in PB, not Yamamoto. So Imanaga led the league in strikeouts this last season. Yeah, I'm intrigued. I think I brought the same thing up when we talked about Yamamoto. I've had him in my queue in probably every draft I'm in. He's went just a little earlier than I was ready to. I do hope to hopefully draft him on a team or two. Yeah, and the Steamer projections, 148 innings, 26 starts. Sure. Looks
Sure.
looks about right to me, right? We really don't know. We're just guessing, but I like what I've heard from people that do know more about guys coming from NPB and KBO. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I was able to pull the trigger on Imanaga, I think twice in the, I think 5 or 6 drafts that I've completed so far. I wasn't stretching out for him. I still have Jake Mason in my ear talking about, the transition, those players that are made those transitions and how those have, how those ratios have translated in the first year. He's shown obviously an electric fastball, but the control has always been not so much a concern. I mean, this was the concern that we've heard from beat reporters talking about why the Yankees ended up souring on him, not worried about his fly ball tendencies in Yankee Stadium. Obviously it would have been fine to see him do that in San Francisco. The Wrigley Field is, the friendly confines kind of works both ways. It's not that bad of a ballpark. If you're not listening to it, listen to, the Plus Pitch podcast with Nick Pollock as he's going through every single team's rotations. He just did the Cubs rotations. We talked about that at length, especially with, between Jameson Taillon, who he also just talked to. You can listen to that interview on the Talking Pitching podcast, but also in length with the Imanaga deal just happening. So, I'm a fan. I think where you're going to end up having to grab him, he's not going to do anything to hurt you as well. Granted, a signing always brings people up, so we'll kind of see how that affects his ADP, where you're going to get him. So get in that DC now, Kevin. See if you can.
That's what I was just looking at, actually. So it over the past 4 weeks, there have been 16 draft champions in FBC leagues ended. So 16 league sample size here. He's going just after Yu Darvish and Lucas Giolito. And then a whole bunch of relievers go before we start seeing Emmett Sheehan, Brian Bayo, Christopher Sanchez, Tristan McKenzie. So unless he skyrockets too much, and I don't really know that a signing in Wrigley Field for a pitcher that we knew was going to sign somewhere is going to send it up too far, other than just remind everybody of his name. So yeah, I think he's going in about the right spot, probably.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the other big hit, the big hitting signing that we saw happen, which I think it was a little surprising to me that it was only a 1-year deal. I'm talking about Teoscar Hernandez signing a 1-year deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers, because of course they did. In $23.5 million later, they have a new, presumably left fielder, because their DH spot is pretty much tied up at the moment and for quite some time. Were you surprised to see him get the 1-year deal? Do you think this is more of, hey, I have the opportunity to play for what on paper looks like to be one of the best teams in baseball almost ever, and going for that, like that team win record or whatever, opportunity to play in the playoffs? Is it more of that for Hernandez, or do you think this is, I can get the most amount of money for one season, and then maybe that can catapult me into that 4-year deal that he wanted? A lot of the rumors going around before that where, teams weren't willing to go past 2, maybe 3 years. And obviously he's still at an age where he really wants to be able to solidify that, 4 to 5 year contract if he can get it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. I think he got, even though a little over a third of the contract is deferred, he got close to, in this 1-year deal, probably what he was being offered for those 2-year deals. And so how can we not like this landing spot for him? Sure, he might hit a little lower in the order, but there's about 20 teams where he could be hitting 3rd or 4th and not get as many plate appearances as he can get hitting 6th or 7th for the Dodgers. So I think it's great. He's one of the few right-handed bats in the lineup. I don't think he will be affected by their playing matchups as much as some of the other outfielders on the team. I think this is great. I mean, we talked about this quite a bit recently. 26 home runs, 7 stolen bases, hitting 258, and we were disappointed in that season. Now, will he get 678 plate appearances? Maybe, if he stays healthy. But I think that's his floor. I think the RBI and runs scored go up in this lineup, even if he is in that 6-7 spot, maybe even hitting 5th versus left-handed pitching to boost his plate appearances just a little bit. So yeah, I'm very happy with the teams I have already drafted him on. Obviously, in this case, I think his ADP does rise fairly significantly. So I'm extremely happy that I'd already drafted him in a couple of spots.
I guess I'm a little worried that going into a lineup like this, like the Dodgers, rather than going to a team that has some glaring holes that he could take advantage of as far as playing time goes, will provide him with an opportunity is not the right word, but an opportunity to lose playing time, to lose plate appearances as a right-handed bat in a lineup where, as you mentioned, there are a lot of left-handed options that will probably be in more of a platoon than you would want Hernandez to be, giving them more of an opportunity to, give him time to rest, not bat against as many righties as maybe he would have in a team that had a little bit more opportunity. Is that unfounded? Should that be of concern at all? Or is his production just going to be that good when he's in the field that doesn't really matter?
That's what I think. I think he bounces back. So if you look at his stat lines, they're very similar. Over the past full seasons and even 2020 shortened season, probably even better if you prorate it out. But it took him nearly 100 more plate appearances than he'd had in his career to get there to those numbers this last season. And like I said, I think that's his floor. If he gets back to the production he had the previous 2 seasons, then the lower plate appearances, he's going to end up 25 to 30 home runs, not 0 stolen bases, although the 5 to 10 isn't what it used to be, but it's not 0. Decent batting average, even a batting average that could help slightly on our fantasy teams, and 70 to 80 runs, 70 to 80 RBI. I think that's what we're looking at, and that's what we were used to from him. It's all we got last year. It just took a lot more plate appearances to get it.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment there as well. All right, let's go back to a pitching signing here, Kevin. Going over to the East Coast, the Mets get their guy. In a way, they get a guy. Sean Manaea leaves San Francisco, gets a 2-year, I use air quotes here, 2-year deal, $28 million deal. He does have an opt-out after the first year, basically making it a player option for that second year. So he could become a free agent if he has an amazing season and really, they really push him to the limit and he does really good things. He could opt out and hopefully get that, multi-year deal that, everybody wants. Sean Manaea with the Mets, and all the rumors are that, of course, if you're not doing this as well, you're doing something wrong. But as you probably read in the newest Mining the News by Jeff Zimmerman, it looks as though the Mets are done with their rotation. So obviously Manaea is in there. Is he going to be given enough opportunity by the Mets in a different way than the opportunity he was given by the Giants to, go 5 innings, to put up innings in general, volume his way into relativity in 12-seamers? I
think so. I think we're probably looking at 150 innings or so. And Steamer has him at 148 right now. Yeah, I mean, that was our question. We talked about him throughout the offseason as well. Where does he end up? What's his role going to be? Is he going to move back and forth a little bit like he did with the Giants and performed fairly well for the Giants in that role? good ballpark. I think, as you know, that I am guilty of this myself. We like to make fun of the Mets if we're not Mets fans, right? But
I'm pretty sure Mets fans make fun of the Mets too. That's cool. Throwing all the money at players last offseason didn't work out for them, and they let some of them move on at the trade deadline. This is still a pretty darn good lineup. Pretty decent rotation. The Mets are going to win some games. Sure, they're in the same division as Atlanta and Philadelphia, who probably project to be better teams. But the Mets are going to win some ball games, and he's, the 3 or 4 in this rotation and 150 innings. I think this is an instance where the price, I think, again, probably does go up a little bit, because I think most people do believe that he is going to be in the starting rotation. And that was a question with where he landed. In 12-team leagues, which you asked me about, he's not being drafted. His minimum pick in the DCs is 362. There have been a handful of 12-team online championships drafted. I could pull that up to see if he has been drafted real quick. But, his ADP, his min pick in DCs is after the final pick in what a 12-team 30-round draft would be. So I think he's worth a shot late here. He probably does jump up into the late rounds of those drafts as a starter for one of the larger fan bases in baseball. But in my opinion, it's worth a shot. Yeah, you got to wonder where he's going to be in that opening rotation. Just because you're the best pitcher doesn't necessarily mean you're, a top 1 or 2 guy. Just how spring training ended up working out, the schedule, and how those guys are being stretched out. So I guess I wonder if Manaea is going to get a start in that opening weekend for the Mets, and if he's worth drafting in a 12-teamer just to get that start, or fabbing him in that first fab period before post Korea games start. Strategy to think about how you're utilizing those last 2 or 3 picks, especially in a 12-teamer where you're going to be able to stream in and out guys off the wire, especially early on. How you want to utilize that. You're going to want to get production and not have to, spend the fab to get that kind of production if you're doing those fab leagues early on, like we have been.
Yeah.
All right.
And in the online championship, there's only been 4 of them. He was drafted in 1 of the online championships, which is a 12-team league so far. So yeah, he's available in those last round or 2.
There you go. All right, we got a couple of smaller deals happening as of recent, and or it's just some news to talk about. We'll get to those things, and then we're going to talk about Steamer 600 projections right after this.
If you travel for work, you know to pack 2 suits, business and swim. With your Delta SkyMiles Business Amex card, buying that plane ticket for a business trip can get you closer to medallion status. That a meeting in Montana means visiting almost every national park.
Yellowstone? Check.
Because you're the chief excursion officer. It's why you're a Delta SkyMiles Platinum Business American Express card member. If you travel, Terms apply. Visit go.amex/business.
Hey friends, are you struggling to attract and retain top talent? If you're worried about recruiting and retention, consider Insperity, a leading HR provider. They'll help you improve hiring and compensation practices so you can spend more time growing your business and less time on HR. Visit Insperity.com and download their free ebook on how to build your dream team. Don't let a lack of talent hinder your success. See how Insperity provides HR that makes a difference at Insperity.com.
Hey parents, Greenlight is here to take one big thing off your to-do list, teaching your kids about money. With a Greenlight debit card and money app of their own, kids and teens learn to earn, save, and invest. You can send money instantly, set flexible controls, and get real-time notifications of your kids' money activity. Set up chores and put allowance on autopilot to reward them for their hard work. Then learn about the world of money together. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
Right. All right. One of those smaller deals. I feel like it happened a long time ago, but it just never got really reported on at all. Like all of a sudden I saw this tweet and I'm like, hey, this tweet is like really old and nobody's talking about it. Probably for good reason, but it's still a name that we're all aware of, and we probably should continue to be aware because of where he ended up. And that's Zach Plesac signed a 1-year deal, $1 million with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Roster Resources got him right now as the long reliever / sixth man in the rotation, if it was a 6-man rotation, because of the rest of the guys that are in that rotation and the injury history that they almost all of them have. Are you expecting to see Plesac kind of jump into that role or be valuable in a long relief role for them, where he's able to eat innings, possibly, vulture some wins if the Angels are going to win any games? Or what kind of expectations do you have here? Or is this like maybe a late round DC option at best?
I don't even want him on a DC.
There you go.
Many will tell you that they completely just toss out 2020 for a lot of players. If there is anybody I just toss out 2024, it's the 55 innings that we saw Zach Plesac be relevant in 2020. He's been a horrible pitcher every other inning he's thrown of his career. I have zero interest.
All right, that's why I got $1 million for the Angels after
right.
Being out, and that's why we haven't talked about this signing in for so long. I just think that there's a possibility he gets extra innings with the Angels than he wouldn't have gotten anywhere else, and something to watch. Then I'm going to start maybe on other people's
DFS and stacking against him when that happens.
There it is. That's a matchup we want to be looking for. All right. Let's go with the signing that happened most recently. Again, going back to the Dodgers, they signed a minor league deal with Eliezer Hernandez, formerly, of course, of the Marlins. The Dodgers, we use the term Dodgeritis all the time. It wasn't as relevant last year because it was more about a necessity than it was out of strategy, kind of moving guys in and out of the rotation and trying to, piece together what they could with their injuries and whatnot. I mean, is Eliezer a minor league deal? So obviously, there's no guarantee, but with all the guys that they do have kind of coming up between Sheehan and others, Michael Grove and what have you, do you see, Hernandez coming back from his injury and coming back to actually produce on what potentially is going to be a very winning ball club in an opportunity to, spot start here or there to do enough to kind of get the Ryan Pepio treatment, whereas like he does enough to like hold on to a spot where you get excited about it, because we were excited about Hernandez for a long time, right? With Miami, they had a lot of potential. Obviously, injuries and what have you have derailed a lot of that, and hence his minor league deal he's doing with the Dodgers. But really, this seems like there wasn't that many better places that this could happen for somebody like him. Are you interested in Hernandez in the role that he's currently has with the Dodgers?
Not in drafting him. Even in draft champions, just we don't know, but this is a great spot for him to land. You referenced Jeff Zimmerman's got a new edition of his Minding the News out. Sounds like the Dodgers may not call it a 6-man rotation, but the rotation is going to get the rest as if they were a 6-man rotation. So guys like Eliezer Hernandez in certain weeks may come up and get these spot starts, and that's going to be something worth keeping an eye on, how he performs in spring training as a non-roster invitee, assuming that they do start him off back in the minors so that he's getting some innings and building up arm strength. They can use him for depth in the bullpen if they need to, and then just it's definitely going to be worth watching Like you said, we were excited about him for a couple of seasons. He just hasn't been healthy. We haven't seen him at the major league level since 2022. We've only seen about, 130 innings over going back through season 2020. So, yeah, it's somebody worth keeping an eye on, especially because of, one, like you mentioned, the history of the Dodgers and how they use their staff, and two, the fact that they probably are going to rest the entire rotation throughout the season.
Yeah, that's the interesting part to me. I agree that it's not. I don't expect Hernandez to like kind of do enough to stick as a regular component of that rotation, but I do expect them to be utilizing him in that almost like secondary rotation that they're going to have when inevitably there are injuries, when there are inevitably rest that needs to happen, when they want to make sure that Buehler has bullets in the gun come the playoffs, not so much in April. So maybe this is more opportunity that we see him in the early in the season, and so kind of like to push those innings around for everybody else throughout the course of the end of the season. We'll see how the Dodgers handle it. I'll like to see, obviously, a lot of it's going to depend on how he performs in spring training, as you mentioned, as a non-roster invitee. He doesn't have a guaranteed spot anyway. But it'll be interesting to see if he, makes the trip to Korea in that first 2-game series, or like who makes that roster, and if he's utilized in any capacity in the spotlight there. Again, it all hinges on what he does in spring training and who he impresses or doesn't impress. All right, last thing here, we got some news out of White Sox camp. Chris Getz talking about Garrett Crochet's role heading into 2024. Of course, Crochet, one of the top picks in the draft a couple of years ago, and then made his way up to the majors fairly quickly, and really hasn't panned out as a starter. But now he will be stretched out as a starter. We'll see how long that takes. Gets made a couple of comments about that's probably going to be a little bit longer of a process than anybody would like. But the fact is that the White Sox have a whole bunch of holes everywhere, including in their rotation, and Crochet ultimately was drafted to fill one of those holes. So now he might have that opportunity. Steamer 600, we're going to talk about it later on today, so that's why I want to leave this last nice little segue. Of course, it's not just 600 plate appearances. They also do the projections for pitchers as well. For starting pitchers, they give 200 innings, and for relievers, they give 65. So they still have Crochet, of course, in that reliever bucket, but still projecting him with the K per 9 along the same lines as Kodai Senga, Chris Sale, stars like that, and a whole bunch of other relievers as well. I don't even know how to ask this question, Kevin, but it's like, because it's the White Sox, and I know the answer to, are you interested in this player? Insert White Sox player here. But Crochet, definitely a prospect that's had a lot of potential. Could he take advantage of this? Do you see him being the type of player that can take advantage of this, stretching himself in a proper way, and performing throughout the course of the season that at least gets you to pay attention?
Yes. As I'm surprised, as interested as I am, much like you framed the question, right? Yeah. I'm intrigued here. We just don't know. We did see a few innings out of him, 13 appearances in 2023 after not seeing him all of 2022. They weren't as good of innings, obviously very, very small sample size. They weren't as good as the 50 some innings we saw in 2021. He's still only 24 years old. It'll be his age 25 season, but he's not turning 25, and just barely will make the cutoff right before July 1st for it to be his age 25 season. It's going to be intriguing and definitely something I'm going to watch. I don't think maybe I would be interested very, very late in a draft champions league. As we've talked throughout the offseason. Many of our guests have brought it up, including Derek Butcher of NFBC. You need reinforcements coming in the second half. And if they would get him stretched out a little bit and he gets some starts late in the season, maybe he could help out a draft champions team. Probably not interested, but I will consider it. He'll be somebody I'm looking at, when we're going 750 players deep. But I am very intrigued by this for some reason, in spite of it being the White Sox.
I would say this is the roster resources projected rotation for the Chicago White Sox. Dylan Cease, who's still on the roster, Eric Fede, Michael Kopech, Michael Soroka, and then Chris Flexen, who they just signed recently. All righties, an entire right-handed rotation. So Crochet has that going for him. Not as though there's going to be a big hurdle for him talent-wise to push any of these, at least one, if not multiple of these guys out of the rotation if he performs well and actually shows that he's stretched out. So I do believe that this isn't just posturing. Like, he is going to be stretched out. He is going to get that opportunity. It'll be up to him to just not fall on his face and fail and take advantage of that situation. And they have plenty of lefties in that bullpen. Not that it matters, right, all that as well. So they're not going to be missing them in that scenario. So the opportunity is there. I believe them in when they say he's going to be stretched out, because we hear this a lot. Like, I mean, as a Red Sox fan, we've heard this a lot recently, with, Tanner Houck and Garrett Whitlock, and you're just not knowing what their role is going to be, no matter what they say it's going to be. This one, it seems a little bit more clear cut. It seems a little bit more obvious that, hey, what they're saying is true. All the stars are aligned. It's a bad team with a lot of opportunity. This is what Crochet had, was drafted to do at 11th overall in his draft class. And so we'll see how he actually performs, because the strikeouts could be there. I mean, the production could be there, and he very well just could piggyback with somebody like Kopech, who is going to, throw himself into a 3-inning start, and then they could switch it up with the lefty and Crochet and have him go in the next 4 innings as well. So obviously the wins are going to be difficult, but
if he can somehow reel in that walk rate as he's being stretched out, this is such a fascinating, profile. We said he threw 6 innings at AA and 6 innings at AAA. Okay, I know. Why am I even bringing that up? Because it was a 40% strikeout rate and a 50% strikeout rate in those 2 stops. Just absolutely amazing. Steamer has him projected 27% strikeout rate for the, I believe, 80 innings. Yeah, 81 innings they have him projected for. And it's amazing, but they also have projected for an 11% walk rate, I believe. Yeah, 11.3% walk rate. Not so great. So, yeah, this is gonna be fun to watch, and it's one of those guys, we talk about this fairly often. We're all cheering for him, right? Nothing has went right for him since he was drafted 11th overall several years ago. Would love to see him have some success.
Yeah, you got to give Mike Carter something to hang a hat on. Yeah,
Brett Phillips and Garrett Crochet.
You got Brett Phillips, Mike. We'll bring up Brett Phillips every week if we have to. All right. That seems to be plenty of news to talk about today, Kevin. Let's get into a little bit of diving into the different projections that not everybody talks about when they're talking about projections, especially after this episode. We'll probably start seeing a whole slew of other projections coming out, but we are going to dive into some interesting projections out of the Seamer 600. We'll explain those in a little bit right after this.
If you travel for work, you know to pack 2 suits, business and swim. With your Delta SkyMiles Business Amex card, buying that plane ticket for a business trip can get you closer to medallion status. That a meeting in Montana means visiting almost every national park.
Yellowstone? Check.
Because you're the chief excursion officer. It's why you're a Delta SkyMiles Platinum Business American Express card member. If you travel, you know. Terms apply. Visit go.amex/business.
Hey friends, are you struggling to attract and retain top talent? If you're worried about recruiting and retention, consider Insperity, a leading HR provider. They'll help you improve hiring and compensation practices so you can spend more time growing your business and less time on HR. Visit Insperity.com and download their free ebook on how to build your dream team. Don't let a lack of talent hinder your success. See how Insperity provides HR that makes a difference at Insperity.com.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
All right. Of course, you're still listening to On the Wire. We are going to dive a little bit into the Steamer 600 projections. Of course, they've been out for quite some time now, but we kind of focused on what we expect players to do. Hence, we use the traditional projections like the regular Steamer projections or Todd Zola's projections at Masters Ball, or the upcoming ATC, the BAT, the PLV projections, a whole lot of other projections that are typically taking into account playing time. They're taking into account injury history. They're taking into account how much production they're actually going to put forth. And then what does that production look like? Steamer 600 kind of evens the playing field, right? That's hence the name Steamer 600. It gives every batter, whether they're signed or not, 600 plate appearances. And if they were given 600 plate appearances based on all the things they put into their projections, this is what they think that they could put forth. Of course, it's not an exact science because you have to really take into account the platoon options, the other players on other teams, but this doesn't matter. It takes all that out of the, you don't have to think about that at all. On the pitcher side, as I mentioned earlier, they give 200 innings, which obviously nobody, like 4 guys will do that this year. Or they have been, at least it's been like the case for the last couple of years. And for the known relievers, they give 65 innings. So again, puts everybody on the same playing field. It gives you an idea of if everything else was created equal, if you had ghost runners, if you were playing in your backyard and you made sure everybody had the same amount of time, everybody has the same amount of at-bats, stuff like that. This is what they would do with their talent level. So Kevin, first and foremost, before we get into some noticeable projections that I noticed on the Steamer 600, how do you use Steamer 600 in such a way where these guys, like a good chunk of them, like especially a lot of them that we're going to talk about, they're not going to hit 600 plate appearances. So that they're not going to give you 30 home runs or 90 something RBIs. They're either going to get injured or they're going to be in a platoon or what have you. But what benefit do you get out of looking like? Are you just holding on to these as like a dream? I'm dreaming on 600 plate appearances and what they could volume their way. We say this a lot. I say this a lot. If only they could get extra plate appearances, they could volume their way into relevancy. So how useful are these projections in your mind?
I love taking a look at Steamer 600. Just first of all, just at first glance, just get an idea. Lots of times, if you pull up Steamer 600 and sort by stolen bases, you're going to be surprised. You might even see guys near the top of the list that you've never heard of, guys that Steamer projects actually to play 3 or 4 games, but if they were at the major league level and in the lineup for 600 plate appearances, they'd steal 55 bases, right?
Yeah. Spoiler alert, we're not going to talk about the top guy on that list today, so I will just throw it out there. Billy Hamilton's still leading the league in stolen bases, and that would be amazing.
But so it gives us an idea. One, it's something we can do with the regular projections as well. But when it's an even 600, it's really easy with just in our head. Okay, per plate appearance, what are we looking at? Or what if he gets 300 plate appearances? Just cut it in half. 450. What do we got? It just makes it a little easier to look at that. I think the big advantage to looking at Steamer 600 in this day and age of Major League Baseball teams playing matchups, more and more platoon players, is who do we want to keep an eye on for when they have the matchups in a week where they are going to get more plate appearances, maybe enough in a week that would be on a 600 pace for the season. That's where there's big value in my mind. Makes it really easy to quickly look and see, okay, this guy, he's a 30 home run, 20 stolen base guy. If he's getting 600 plate appearances, he's on the short side of platoon, but they're facing 3 lefties this weekend. Definitely want to pick this guy up on Sunday Night Fab, get him in my lineup for the weekend. That's where it's really valuable in my mind.
Yeah, it's I talk a lot about the volume of these, right? Like if, of course, we're talking about the counting stats, we're talking about runs, RBIs, strikeouts, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I think the ratios that for me, looking at the Steamer 600 and looking at the ratios and not just ERA or batting average, but also strikeout rate and walk rate, kind of gives you a better sense of, all right, like I just did this just now because it was just funny to look at. But like if you sort the Steamer 600 by strikeout percentage, these are all the guys that if they're going to get 600 plate appearances, this is probably what they're going to strike out as. And so they're all minor leaguers. They're all guys that obviously either aren't going to get a look at the majors or they have the most minimal look at all if they don't make some kind of adjustment. But like Andy Cohen of the Houston system, over a 50% K rate. This shows me that if I had any interest in taking a stab at one of these prospects late in a DC, bye-bye. Like, no. Like, because first and foremost, we talk about, the impact that the ratios can have on your team goes up, obviously, with more playing time. And so catchers, don't hurt your average as much as you would think just because they're not giving you as much playing time, et cetera, et cetera. But then at the same time, you have somebody like Juan Soto, who's the topic of conversation in the past and ongoing, that because he walks so much, that his batting average doesn't actually impact you as much as you would, as much as you would think. And so, but this tells me like, these are the guys that are projected to, if given the opportunity, strike out all the time, which means they're not going to get the opportunity. It's like the less likely scenario.
Another way they can reel us back in is I know Steamer is very conservative, typically, not always. In fact, I really take a real close look when they're not seemingly conservative on a prospect coming up. But when you look like Jason Dominguez, for example, right? We've talked multiple times this offseason. Is he somebody we want to stash for when he comes back, right? Bryce Harper got back right around the All-Star break, a little earlier than we expected. Same thing. Do we want to stash him? Steamer 600. So 600 plate appearances for Jason Dominguez. They have him 17 home runs, 18 stolen bases. If we're talking 200 plate appearances, do I care about that? That's not somebody I want to be stashing for months on my roster, right? So again, another way, in addition to what you're talking about, that they can kind of reel us back in from what our perception of what our expectations might be.
Yeah, fair. On the opposite side, it's like I mentioned, on the pitching side, we know that none of these pitchers, minus 4, maybe 10 at most, are going to hit that 200 inning mark. So how useful is that scenario? It's like it's you can dream on all these pitchers going over 200 innings, or not only 200 innings, but 200 strikeouts, because they kind of go hand in hand at this point, unless you're, Spencer Strider and what have you, and a couple of other exceptions. But like it's got to be pretty difficult to kind of glance at this and not be like, whoa, like I should be stretching. I should be reaching out for this guy a little bit earlier, because if he does stretch himself out to 200 innings, this is what I can be expecting. It seems like it's a little bit more volatile on the pitching side. Do you disagree with that?
I don't. And it's so sad to pull up the pitching Steamer 600 and like, could we just get a 200 inning season out of Jacob deGrom one more time? Right? He's still above Spencer Strider all across the board. One more time. I want to see that.
That would be nice. That would be nice. It's not happening this year.
It's probably not happening.
I'm not stretching. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not losing hope forever. But yeah. You're probably right on that. All right. So I went through and kind of cherry picked out a couple of leaders from the Steamer 600. And obviously I'm not taking guys that are, going in the first 3 rounds, because, their playing time doesn't really, the 600 plate appearances for the hitters isn't that far off from their actual projection. So it's the whole point of these, the list that I have here. Kevin, I'm going to give you a bunch of names. We'll go name by name, and I want you to rank them on a scale of 1 to 9. 1 being a whole lot has to happen for the said player to hit 600 plate appearances. It could be because they're injury prone. It could be because they're an obvious platoon, that they're a rookie, that they're just on a bad team, that they're not going to, go around the order. Whatever the reason might be that's going to stop them from getting to 600 plate appearances. A 1 means a lot of it has to happen. On the other side, 9 means they're a lock. I mean, this should be what they're projected for. I don't foresee you giving a 9 to anybody on this list, but, I could be wrong here. And same thing for the pitchers, for starting pitchers, 200 innings being that marker that you're looking for. A lot has to happen for them to stay healthy enough to go deep enough into games throughout the course of the season to hit 200. That's the 1. 9 is, I expect them to get pretty close without anything else happening. So let's start off with our home run leaderboard here. Of course, at the top of the list is Giancarlo Stanton of the New York Yankees. Is he the DH? Is he the 5th outfielder? I don't know. That's what I'm asking you for. He is projected, if everybody has 600 plate appearances, he'd have the 5th most home runs according to Steamer 600 with 36. He'd also have the 11th most RBI. I thought that was noticeable because even with 600 plate appearances, Steamer doesn't really project anybody to hit triple digits in both runs or RBIs. So to get him up there at 92 is significant. I mean, is the talent still there for him to be relevant in a scenario, in a format where you're able to take him in, take him out, have IL spots, and be able to utilize him like on a daily format league with IL spots like on a Yahoo or CBS or what have you? Or is it just too much of a headache? And of course, you still got to give him the ranking that I outlined.
Yeah. So I'm going to start out with the ranking here. We're going to give this a shot. He hasn't hit 600 plate appearances in 6 years. So it's going to be a low number, right? How low? He did get to 579 in 2021. He got close, 139 games. I don't think, even if he were healthy, I don't think we see 139 games. I think in order to stay healthy, he needs more days off. They also have other players that can benefit from playing in the designated hitter position. And the last thing that I want to see is Giancarlo Stanton trotting out there in the outfield in New York, if I have him on any of my teams. Also, performance the last couple of years. I mean, we've really seen this batting average tank as the strikeout rate has jumped up a little bit. He always had fairly high strikeout rates, but he's got up to that 30% that he was close to in the past, but never really got there. So, I'm looking at it. I really don't think it's going to happen, but I'm not going to say a 1 here. 2.5, 2 to 3 is the number on if he gets to the 600 plate appearances. highly, highly doubtful, nearly impossible. However, the other question she asked as you brought him up, if we're looking for power late, he's going outside the top 300 over these past 4 weeks, these 16 draft champions drafts that I alluded to earlier. And he went 207 in one of them. Obviously a Yankee fan hopped in that draft, but we have seen 31 and 24 home runs from him the last couple of seasons, over 400 plate appearances in both of those seasons. The RBI, always great. This batting average really hurts. We talk about this with some other players throughout the offseason and throughout the year. The fact that we're not getting a lot of at-bats from him, the batting average doesn't hurt as much, but it still is something to consider. You're not going to get any stolen bases. He's not even going to attempt a stolen base. I'd be willing to wager on that. So at the price, I think he comes into consideration for me here. And as the reason we're bringing up this conversation that we're having on this episode, the Steamer 600s, like, on a per plate appearance, if he was playing a full season, he's still a over 35 home run hitter throughout a full season. If he meets these projections, that it is something to take a look at, in spite of the batting average that, since he won't get the 600 plate appearances, doesn't hurt us as much as it could.
Yeah, I've been typically somebody who is willing to overlook the playing time concerns, the injury concerns, and whatnot with Stanton in the past. My concern, not only moving forward with the injuries, but also with the rest of that roster, the way that it's made up. We already talked about the quote depth of that outfield as it is. Like you already said, he's not being trotted out into the outfield of Yankee Stadium. He is that DH, but they have other talented players that are going to need time at DH as well, not only to give Stanton a break, but also to keep like Aaron Judge's bat in the lineup without putting him in the outfield every single day. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity for Stanton to be missing, to not to play like every other day, which is going to make him really difficult to stream, never mind roster. It's like, if you want, even in a 12-team league, if he's out there and you're like, oh, great, the Yankees have a 7-game stint. How many of those 7 games, though, is Stanton actually going to play? And yes, per plate appearance, sure, he could still be putting up better numbers than somebody else on the wire who's going to play all 7 games. It's just, there's too many variables there to worry about that headache. Maybe in a DFS situation or in a daily moves league where you're able to, kick them in and out pretty easily against, matchups that are going to be pretty obvious. That sounds great. But like in a roto format where you have a lot less flexibility, even at that price on the draft table, it's going to be difficult for me I haven't pulled the trigger yet. And I don't, even with the outfield eligibility, I will give him that. He didn't, he's got that outfield eligibility still in just about every format, which is nice, especially in the 5 outfield situation. But you're just taking up so much of that opportunity and that volume that you could be getting elsewhere. And a lot of it has to do with how you want to manage your team, how many teams you have to manage, and how you, knowing yourself as a manager of your fantasy roster, how you want to actually put the time and effort into doing that as well. That's the kind of player he has become. All right, some more interesting ones going forward. We go to Patrick Wisdom. He is ranked 17th on the home run list on the Steamer 600 with 32. Looking at his situation, where he's at, first of all, can he get to that 600, and is he actually going to do you enough with that power number, if you believe it, in 600 plate appearances to offset any of the negatives that he brings.
I agree with everything you just said about Giancarlo Stanton, and he has a much better chance of getting to 600 plate appearances than Patrick Wisdom. It's the strikeout rate, especially against righties. Now in 2023, he actually did not perform as much better against lefties as we have seen previously in his career. But in 422 plate appearances in his career versus left-handed pitching, he's got 29 home runs. So in 2/3 of a season, basically 29 home runs. This is kind of the guy I brought up in the example of who I would see for a guy on the short side of a platoon, get some matchups versus some left-handed pitching for half of a week or even a full week in weekly leagues. Definitely somebody to keep an eye on in daily change leagues and DFS. But there is just absolutely no way that he gets anywhere close to 600 plate appearances with a career 37% strikeout rate in one less than 1,300 plate appearances. Plenty to know that this is who he is. So unfortunately, I will give him the one here on the ranking as far as I don't see any way he would ever get close to 600 plate appearances. But the Steamer 600 does give us an idea of what he could do over a full season. So what we can, what kind of player we're looking at when we're throwing him in much smaller samples, 2 or 3 games at a time. And I think this is just verifying what we thought we knew a bit about Patrick Wisdom. I was a little surprised that his numbers weren't better versus lefties, especially in 2023 and even for his career. But 2023 drug him down quite a bit.
Yeah. And I mean, performance aside, you also have to consider the roster in which he's playing around, not only being a righty bat on the bench for the Cubs. The Cubs have other options coming up. So even if there were an injury or 2 or 3, it doesn't necessarily mean Wisdom's like jumping into that opportunity. Stranger things could happen, but this is the benefit of those Steamer 600. Be like, if everything happened, and that's why that's why I made these rankings the way I did. It's like, all right, it's a 1. It is little to absolutely no chance of it happening. So it's not something you have to spend a whole lot of time on. So we're not going to spend any more time on it. We're going to move on to the next guy on the list, Nolan Gorman and Byron Buxton. I'm just lumping them together because they have the same amount of home runs projected if they were to hit 600 at 31. Nolan Gorman obviously dealing with, working through some injuries from last season as well. Byron Buxton is currently injured. I just know it somehow. Like while we were talking, something happened and now he's injured, unfortunately, knock on wood. But Nolan Gorman is, battling for everyday playing time with the Cardinals, probably at second base, with a whole bunch of other guys going, dealing with either surgeries or injuries from last season between Brendan Donovan, Tommy Hedman, playing different positions as well. It seems as though Gorman has the more clear-cut opportunity to play every day going into 2024, whether it's, and if he were, how did you believe the projections that they put forward here based on that opportunity? Yeah,
this is another good one to take a look at. And, I've heard this a few places and I agree with it that as bad as the Cardinals were last season, not only was it mostly due to the pitching performances and some bad luck. They lost a lot of close games early in the season when it seemed like they lost every day for a couple of months straight. The offense wasn't bad at all. Nolan Gorman, a big part of that, right? 27 home runs in 464 plate appearances, 119 games. That's what he's being projected for right now, at least by Steamer. Right, one less game, one less home run in 2024. I don't know that we get to the 600. It's much more possible. Probably right in the middle. We'll give it a 5 on the 1 to 9 scale. Right in the middle. Due to the injury history, they would love for him to be out there every day. If he's healthy, he gets to the 600. Even if he is healthy, they're probably and I think this actually was probably in in Jeff Zimmerman's Minding the News that we brought up several times on this episode, that they're going to take it easy on him early in the season. But yeah, I believe this number wholeheartedly. I think he could get there. Health's the only thing that's going to hold him back. Unfortunately, we're pretty sure health is going to hold him back early.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of factors that can go into hitting 600. For him, it's simply health. It's his role, it's his job. He's a lefty in that lineup, so there's not a lot of other things holding him back. I mean, regular Steamer projection has them, at 511 plate appearances, so not far off from that 600. And if I'm not mistaken, that playing time comes from roster resource from Jason over there, and they're not making it up on their own. But at the same time, that's a secondary source saying, hey, that's pretty close to what you're looking at. And in those 511 plate appearances, they're looking at 26 home runs compared to the 600 plate appearances, getting him 31. So of course that's a rate stat ultimately, and so not a surprise, but that's not far out. I mean, five extra home runs based on that extra playing time, still worth targeting for sure, especially at second base. You're not going to get 25 home runs plus from a whole lot of second basemen out there. Byron Buxton, I don't know if it's worth talking about. You can't go into negative numbers, Kevin. You do have to rank it on 1 through 9. But if he does hit 600, we all know what he can do, what he's kind of done in pieces. But Steamer 600 has him at 31 home runs as well. Yeah. How you feeling about Byron Buxton?
He's reached Steamer 400 one time in his career, and that was 7 years ago. He has never come close to 600 plate appearances, and Steamer projects him for 532, which would be his career high.
This happens every year, though. I feel like Steamer's regular projections.
Minnesota, yeah, and Minnesota's doing. I've been saying this for years, and it always hasn't worked out the way I hoped it would, even when the teams did do what I wanted them to, going back to Miguel Cabrera when we first started this podcast. But why are they going to try to roll him out there as a center fielder, as at least that's what they're saying they're going to do in 2024? That just, yes, you said we can't go negative. I said I didn't want to give anybody a 1. Then I did give it to Wisdom due to he's really only going to face lefties. But we got to go 1 with Buxton here. It's never happened in a nine season career. Hasn't even gotten close, and they want him to play center field in 2024. Unfortunately, I would love to see him just get out there for the 532 plate appearances they haven't projected for. We know he's going to fill up our county stats in those plate appearances. The batting average has come down over the past couple of years. They're actually projecting him for a little bit of a bounce back there, probably due to they're projecting him to be healthy. They're giving him 126 games. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to see that. I hope we do, but we're probably not.
I hope it's not true this year, but like last year, I understand them saying they're going to trot him out to center field. They're going to have to do that out of necessity because Byron Buxton is not the only one who gets hurt in the Minnesota Twins lineup. Royce Lewis, knock on as much wood as I possibly can in his injury history. Kirilloff has put forth, a whole bunch of Miranda, a whole bunch of other situations there that are going to force them to utilize the DH spot by multiple players, and not just clog it up with one guy in Buxton. Does that mean they want to get as much out of Buxton as possible and get him into the lineup at the expense of putting him in the field? or does it mean he just gets a day off here or there? Either way, it's going to hurt this opportunity to come close to it. His career highs 511 plate appearances. Did that in 2017. So he's gotten close, I guess.
Adam, I said I was finally done drafting Byron Buxton, and then what's everybody do? They let him drop to the 20th round in 15-team leagues on me. So I've been drafting him again.
He's UT only, Kevin. Oh man,
20th round. 20th round.
I get it. I mean, that's where you're picking your utility player anyway. Yeah.
He's went as late as 364. By that time, your starting lineup's already filled in. That's a bench bat.
All right. Last power bat I'll talk about here. And I mentioned because he's still in the top 21 for home runs on Steamer 600. I grabbed him in our last listener league, our 15-teamer as well, as my fifth outfielder, maybe my fourth. I'm not sure. My outfield was pretty hurting in that league. I'm talking about Hunter Goodman, 21st most home runs in Steamer 600 with 30. A name that, a lot of people probably haven't really thought about or heard about, maybe even before hearing me say his name on this podcast. But with this kind of projection, if he were to get the playing time, is it somebody we should be paying attention?
I think so. This is intriguing. Roster Resource has him at being in the everyday lineup. I think in the 6 or 7 spot. Steamer's given him 465 plate appearances. Depth charts about 30 more than that, 40 more than that. So even without going to the Steamer 600, he's still projected for mid 20s home runs, non-zero stolen bases, but close enough to zero. Colorado, I talked a lot about this last year. I haven't brought it up much this year. Pretty similar schedule. It's not like 2 years ago where we were blessed with they were perfect. Home for a week, away for a week, home for a week. They do have 7 weeks in 2024 where they are at home all week long. And for those in NFBC formats and other sites that do allow you to change lineups on Friday, there's only 1 or 2 Thursday games where they're not in the same location they were Monday through Wednesday. So we do have the advantage of, if you want to have to pay attention and maintain your lineups with your Colorado players, it can be done again in 2024, similar to 2023. I'm avoiding Rockies in weekly lineups, but in leagues where I can change my lineup on Friday or daily change leagues, I think someone like Goodman here is worth taking a shot on as late as you can get him, right?
Yeah, I mean, you love to see a bat come forth in Colorado. You hate to see a prospect come forth in Colorado. This has Sam Hilliard without the speed written all over it for me, even though I just drafted him at least in one spot, and I'll probably draft him again if he, stays where he's at, and my outfield is kind of desperate at that point in the draft. But yeah, you worry about the fact that he's under the age of 35 and that he's playing for Colorado. We'll see how he does. The fact that it is funny, it's like one of the very few roster pages that has 0 platoons being projected. There's no platoons at all, really. I mean, Colorado, who knows what they do. But we'll see how he didn't make a name for himself last season, and that's why that's why I was saying, this might be the first time you're hearing the name if you're not paying attention, or maybe even if you are. Batting 277 plate appearances at the end of last season, hitting just 1 bomb. He's had plenty of power throughout the minors though, so that very well with enough playing time should translate. So I understand the 30 home runs and 600 plate appearances that the projection's giving him. We'll see if he translates that. You didn't give a number. I don't know. Did you give a number 1 through 9?
I did not give a number.
Like it's important to know, like, hey, if it does translate, if that power from the minors does translate over the course of an entire season, like, should we be paying attention? Only if
I'm
he's
gonna go
actually
a
going to
little
get
over
that.
half. I think with some other teams that would have a need at his position, I think I could get on board and almost count on 600. Rocky's gonna Rocky, so we'll go a little over the halfway point. Give it a 6.
Sure. Yeah, he is a right-handed bat, but they don't have any lefties on the bench to platoon him with. So we'll see. All right, we got some speed guys to talk about, and then we do have some pitchers to talk about as well. We are going to take another quick break, though, and we'll get right back.
If you travel for work, you know to pack 2 suits. Business and swim. You know with your Delta SkyMiles Business Amex card, buying that plane ticket for a business trip can get you closer to medallion status. You know that a meeting in Montana means visiting almost every national park.
Yellowstone? Check.
Because you're the chief excursion officer. It's why you're a Delta SkyMiles Platinum Business American Express card member. If you travel, you know. Terms apply. Visit go.amex/you-know-business.
Hey friends, are you struggling to attract and retain top talent? If you're worried about recruiting and retention, consider Insperity, a leading HR provider. They'll help you improve hiring and compensation practices so you can spend more time growing your business and less time on HR. Visit Insperity.com and download their free ebook on how to build your dream team. Don't let a lack of talent hinder your success. See how Insperity provides HR that makes a difference at Insperity.com.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
All right, let's start with your. This is what you talked about, Kevin, earlier. When you look at the Steamer 600, you look at the stolen base list. That's what we're gonna. So we're gonna look at. We're gonna look at the stolen base leaders of note, and of course, like I said, Billy Hamilton leads it. Doesn't have a team. Probably won't have a team. But he's at the top of that list. So one can dream, right? Third on the list, though, is your boy Darian Blanco, with 54 stolen bases, if given the opportunity to get up to that 600 plate appearance mark. You know, the Royals have always been a team that we've talked about as being a team that's willing to run regardless of manager. It's all about talent. It's all about the who's actually on the roster. And they've been rostering some guys who know how to run. They don't always know how to stay healthy, but they know how to run when they are. Can Blanco find his way? And he was the guy that we were talking about last year on a couple of our shows when he was still available. Is he going, like, all right, for what's the ranking 1 through 9? And then is it somebody that can still, even if they're not a 9, is there somebody who we can still kind of hang our hat on as far as stolen bases go? Because those are something we can stream that stat pretty, easily sometimes.
Yeah. I should have never mentioned I don't want to give a guy a 1 early in the show. The possibility of getting 600 plate appearances for Blanco is a 1. That he does not have a starting role going into the season. However, this is the guy that when he in AAA last year stole 47 bases in 49 games, right? And it wasn't. I mean, he hadn't had that rate, but he'd stole 46 in 2022, 41 in 2021. I mean, he is 30 years old now, but he has not slowed down. He knows how to steal bases. He loves these rules. He doesn't need the plate appearances, right? He had 138 plate appearances last year for 24 stolen bases. That sounds amazing, right? It was in 69 games.
Yep. Nice.
This is the kind of guy we talk about throughout the season. He doesn't have to be in the starting lineup when we're streaming stolen bases, or if Kyle Isbell goes down or doesn't perform. Maybe he's the guy that does get the shot. He does get on base at a decent clip. And so if we see him getting more and more playing time, then he's somebody worth rostering. He's already somebody worth keeping an eye on for streaming for stolen bases throughout the season. Anytime the Royals have a 7-game week, I would count on at least a stolen base or two out of Darren Blanco for the week.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we're going to be talking about throughout the course of the season. We've talked about it the last couple of years. You can stream any category. It's not just pitchers. And you can stream stolen bases almost easier than you can other categories, because it's if you are being a pinch runner, that you're being put in to do one thing. It's like
score a run.
Yeah.
And yes.
You're most likely, if you're put in to pinch run and there's a base open in front of you, there's a reason that you were chosen to do that. And there's a couple of guys that we'll talk about throughout the course of the season that, can be putting themselves in that situation, and at no expense to all the other categories. Like, they can't hurt your batting average if they're not actually getting plate appearances, right?
Over 2 levels last season, he did not have 300 at bats.
Yeah.
He was 71 for 82 in stolen bases.
Sure. Absolutely.
At AAA and Major League Baseball combined.
Yeah.
That is insane.
I mean, as somebody we talk about too, you need the opportunities to steal bases. So even if he is getting plate appearances, he's projected at under a 24% strikeout rate. He's got a respectable 7% walk rate. Like, he's still finding a way on base, even if it's not a pinch runner. So it's somebody I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to, especially in my weekly formats where I just need that stolen base to get the category in a head-to-head category situation. And then, if I'm trying to chip away at the stolen base category in my roto leagues as well. But I think it's really, if you're really just trying to get that win, if you're playing in head-to-head win categories leagues, or just head-to-head categories, and you want to win 5-4, or you want to win 6-4, you want to guarantee the jump up. You stream him for a day or two, he gets you that stolen base, you drop him back down, you do it all again next week, if possible, if nobody else catches on to what you're doing.
I haven't dove into all of the early season schedules yet, but I have begun to look at schedules. Just talked about Colorado a little bit. The Royals play a lot of games out of the gate. So this may be somebody you want to spend that last draft pick on in anticipation of the first full week of the season. They have a 7-game schedule. 2 6-game weeks, and then another 7-game week. So a lot of games, a lot of opportunities in that first 4 full weeks of the season.
All right. Another name that has come up recently, Jorge Mateo of the Baltimore Orioles. He is on the list, 5th most stolen bases if given 600 plate appearances, 44. All right, what's the ranking 1 through 9? He's on a Baltimore roster where playing time in his situation is going to be hard to come by. We're all maybe not all of us, but I know I'm chomping at the bit of Jackson Holiday coming up and taking over that shortstop role every day, as I have him on more than 50% of my roster so far. And I mean, obviously between Gunnar Henderson and all the other guys that are either already there. You got Ramon Urias is still there, your boy. I mean, is it even possible? I know you're going to say the same thing. Like, you shouldn't have said that you wouldn't give a 1, but is there what kind of scenario are we seeing where Mateo actually can, kind of take advantage of what he's done in the past and kind of show off? Yeah,
but he's never gotten close. 533, the closest in his career. So it is a 1, unfortunately. And as good as he has been at stolen bases, getting over 30 for us each of the past 2 seasons, and in only 350 plate appearances, 116 games last season. Unfortunately, I think both of those 2 numbers are coming down due to everything you just said. Baltimore, very crowded infield. So he is a lesser version of Darren Blanco. He doesn't get on base at the same rate but when he does, he's a threat. He will be a utility guy. He will be used as a pinch runner late in games. So in deep leagues, he may be someone we can use in that same manner. However, it's the numbers pretty much across the board, other than he can run into a couple more home runs. I think everything else is worse for Mateo. Unfortunately, after that amazing start he had last season, it almost looked like we had an everyday infielder there for a good month and a half. And I was excited about that. In fact, I offered, it was at the time Clay Holmes was struggling a little bit. I offered Clay Holmes for Mateo straight up in a league, got turned down. 2 weeks later, and he's a Yankee fan. He came back and said, "Hey, you still want to do Mateo for Holmes?" I was like, "No, I
not
was
particularly."
Gamble, and I was taking a big gamble, and you saved me from myself. I'm not making that trade now.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. All right, let's go down. The last three guys on the stolen base list here are all, I think they're all rookie eligible. I don't think any of these guys hit that mark. So, playing time, obviously, for younger guys is always going to be a question mark. None of these guys really have particular, injury histories from what I can tell. But tell me which one of these three guys you think can kind of back their way into something closer to 600 between Forrest Wall by Atlanta. You got Victor Scott of St. Louis. Both outfielders here, and then David Hamilton, infielder / second baseman for the Boston Red Sox, who, all of these guys created something for themselves last year, even in a very small amount, specifically with Forrest Wall and David Hamilton with their teams. Wall, sixth most stolen bases on the 600 with 39. Victor Scott, if given 600 plate appearances, would be at 38. Same thing with David Hamilton, eighth on the list as well. As of right now, as I'm looking at it, Forrest Wall, fourth outfielder for Atlanta, has literally no power, but a whole lot of stolen bases in his minor league career. David Hamilton, as we saw with Boston, could just run wild if given the opportunity. He was kind of up and down with Red Sox as well. Victor Scott in St. Louis has always had, and still, even losing Tyler O'Neill, not a whole lot of opportunities in that outfield, even with guys that we talked about earlier kind of vying for coming back from injury or surgeries or what have you. Who do you like most to get as much playing time as possible to actually be relevant in your everyday lineup, rather, never mind as a streamer?
Yeah, all of these guys are ones on the ranking. The one I am the most excited about that just was he was one of the guys that you just couldn't take your eyes off of in Arizona. That's Victor Scott. Mm-hmm. He not only is he extremely fast, it appeared he knew exactly what he was doing on the base paths, whether it was a stolen base attempt or running the bases. Even when he was not hitting home runs, he was hitting the ball with authority. He was driving the baseball. I mean, this guy looks like he could be a superstar. Yes, the outfield's full right now. Tommy Edman, we know his injury history. He says he's going to be ready to go for spring training with the, I think it was a wrist issue he had most recently. We all love Lars Nootbaar, I believe, or most of us do. Jordan Walker as well. At any sign that there's a spot that Victor Scott can play, I think he's going to play his way into this lineup fairly early in the season. I know it's crowded. Things happen. Draft skills, not roles. We've heard from Ron Chandler and the Baseball HQ guys for years. Victor Scott has the skills, and I we'll see him at some point, and that sky's the limit with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing he's got working against him, he is a non-roster invitee to spring training. Like you said, he was in Arizona, but he's not on the 40-man.
Right.
I don't think that's really hurting him per se, as long as he actually puts forth the effort. We saw the same thing with Jordan Walker. We saw St. Louis is willing to do it if it makes sense, at least from a production standpoint. With the addition of Von Grissom in Boston, it hurts David Hamilton's opportunity or chances of carving out anything close to an everyday or even a strong platoon role in Boston. Forrest Wall is, obviously with Jared Kelenic, doesn't really bring anything else to the table besides the stolen base opportunity. He needs those opportunities. I don't foresee Atlanta being the type of team that puts somebody in as a pinch runner or needing to put in a guy as a pinch runner to steal a base late in a game to be that kind of guy that we were talking that Blanco could be, that even Mateo could be, really. But I mean, I think that if there was anything that was going to get Forrest Wall more playing time, it's going to be some kind of injury, or you're going to see somebody like Kelenic just fall flat in his face once again, where he needs to be, handheld a little bit more, and that maybe Forrest Wall, since he's already on the roster or expected to be on that starting roster, he's the first man in to take advantage of that. But even in that situation, he's not the kind of guy that I'm seeing taking advantage of those limited opportunities to where he's going to be valuable. All right, we got a list of pitchers here, Kevin. So I'm gonna rattle these up because I think. All right, that's not true. I was going to say most of them are injury related of why they are not going to hit 200 innings, but it's really just the first two guys, Carlos Rodon, Chris Sale. So I will bunch those two guys together first. Carlos Rodon we're doing this by strikeouts, the 8th most strikeouts if everybody had 200 innings at 238. Chris Sale, now with Atlanta, 10th most strikeouts at 231. So both these guys in the 230 range, 240 range in strikeouts. There, I mean, again, 1 through 9, any chance that either one of these guys finds a groove, stays healthy, if they can hit 200 innings, that this is what they can do. But do you have is it worth the gamble where they're going in drafts that they can even get anywhere close to that?
No, is the easy, quick answer to that question. 5 guys hit 200 innings in 2023. I think we continue to see that number go down. The highest number of innings pitched was 216 by Logan Webb. Zach Gallen, 210. At 2 of the 5 were at 200 even and 201 and a third in Chris Bassett and Miles Mikolas. So none of these guys are going to get to 200. I think 180 is the new 200. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if that adjustment is made on these Steamer 600 rankings over the next year or two. I could see them doing that. And then, it is health for Sale and Rodon. I think I expect to bounce back for Rodon. I expect Sale to perform when healthy in Atlanta. Sale was better than I realized last season. I mean, I remember him being good when he did pitch and was healthy. Going back and look at it, he was even better than I remember. So, and I really do, for one reason or another. And considering their draft costs, I like every guy you have on this list. I depending on how the rest of my draft is going, what I'm doing with my pitching staff at the time, how things are looking, especially when I am looking for strikeouts, knowing that on a per appearance basis, I am going to expect, 5, 6, even more. And you're going to make me play my game. I see you typing, Adam. Your game, I should say. I really, I could draft any one of these guys at some point.
If you travel for work, to pack 2 suits. Business and swim. With your Delta SkyMiles Business Amex card, buying that plane ticket for a business trip can get you closer to medallion status. You know that a meeting in Montana means visiting almost every national park.
Yellowstone? Check.
Because you're the chief excursion officer. It's why you're a Delta SkyMiles Platinum Business American Express card member. If you travel, you know. Terms apply. Visit go.amex/you-know-business.
Hey friends, are you struggling to attract and retain top talent? If you're worried about recruiting and retention, consider Insperity, a leading HR provider. They'll help you improve hiring and compensation practices so you can spend more time growing your business and less time on HR. Visit Insperity.com and download their free ebook on how to build your dream team. Don't let a lack of talent hinder your success. See how Insperity provides HR that makes a difference at Insperity.com.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
All right. Well, so I'm going to lump the next three guys together. And yeah, we're going to play Ask, or like impromptu Ask, avoid, stream, and keep, because all these guys, they made their debuts last year, 2023. They're not all guaranteed to be in their team's rotations come opening day. And I'm mostly looking at you, Emmett Sheehan, with the Dodgers. Kyle Harrison, Andrew Abbott, maybe a little bit more of a guarantee that they are on that opening day starting five. But yeah, both of them in the top, all three of these guys, top 26 in potential strikeouts at 200 innings. So I'm not gonna ask you if they're gonna hit 200 innings. We all know none of these guys are gonna hit 200 innings. But if Sheehan, Harrison, and Abbott all did, they'd be ranking up 219 to 225 strikeouts respectively, according to the Steamer 600. I don't have their ADP in front of me, but I think you should take that into consideration. I'm going to ask you, though, of these three guys, Emmett Sheehan of the Dodgers, Kyle Harrison of the Giants, and Andrew Abbott of Cincinnati, you got to avoid one of them. You're going to stream the other, and you've got to draft one of these guys in a gladiator. Not that you can draft gladiators anymore. They're all sold out. But if you had the opportunity, that's where you'd have to draft them. So what's your take on these three guys in that scenario?
Without looking at ADP, which I am looking really quickly here, but without, this is pretty straightforward for me. So hopefully that ADP doesn't make it that obvious. I like Kyle Harrison in San Francisco. I think he has the best opportunity to be in the rotation from the get-go. Love the ballpark, love what we saw from him last season, and have loved him coming up as a prospect. Kyle Harrison is my keep. Sheehan, as you've just brought up, as we had talked about, the Dodgers probably looking at, they might not call it a 6-man rotation, but it probably is. Now, he is somebody that could easily, on a regular basis, fill that the role of that sixth guy. In fact, I think Roster Resource has him listed 5th right now in the rotation. But because of those question marks, because of the way the Dodgers work historically, he's my streamer. Unfortunately, Andrew Abbott, who I do like as well, by default, that leaves him as my avoid. And these guys are going fairly close in ADP. Sheehan over the last 16 DCs in the 220s. Abbott in the 250s, Kyle Harrison about 270. So I kind of have Sheehan and Harrison flip-flopped as far as ADP goes. That makes me like it even better.
I was just going to say, that makes
it a better price. It makes me like it even better. I'm getting the better price there. So it looks like the market believes Sheehan may have more opportunity, which, like I said, I believe Roster Resource has him in the rotation, even if they go 5-man at the moment. So that's understandable. But yeah, I like all three of these guys, actually.
Yeah. As you mentioned, Roster Resource does have Sheehan as the number 5 guy there. I don't think anybody in that, even in a 5-man rotation for the Dodgers, is pitching every fifth day throughout the course of the season. So I don't think it matters per se. Kyle Harrison on the other end, as the number 3 in that rotation for the Giants, with new management, with him getting himself a year under his belt, or most of a year under his belt at the major league level. I agree wholeheartedly that he has the opportunity, or the best opportunity of these 3 guys, to stick in that rotation, go 5 innings every day, injuries aside, turn off injuries, and see him in April and September in that rotation. So I agree with that sentiment for sure. Last 2 guys here, no, I won't lump them together because the last name doesn't deserve to be lumped with anybody. We will go with simply Joe Boyle. I'm going to leave it at that. No other words, just the words Joe Boyle. Kevin, should we care about Joe Boyle? Because if he hits 200 innings, he could get you 216 strikeouts. You're muted.
No.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, he got to about 100 last season over the multiple levels. So no, he's not going to get. I guess more like 130 actually, but still, he's not going to make that jump. If we do see him for more than 110, 120, if he does get to the 135 or maybe even 150, Steamer hasn't projected for 135. That's where I got that number. If we see that, yeah, the strikeout numbers, we love the ballpark. Not going to get a lot of wins, unfortunately, and that is something that I am taking into consideration, even when drafting guys this late in a draft. It's just the point that we've gotten to with starting pitching, and as few of the guys that get many wins, it's something we do have to take into account. So as a streamer throughout the season, absolutely, somebody we'll keep an eye on in good matchups, especially at home. I could take him in a draft champions league because I do feel we'll get those 135 that Steamer projects, maybe even a little more with the strikeouts in that good ballpark. And and he's being drafted in the mid 400s as late as the mid 500s in recent weeks in the draft champions leagues. So he's somebody to consider. I've only done 1 draft champions league so far this season, and I don't believe I took him. I say I don't believe because some things going back, I've been looking at my drafts recently, Adam, and I was shocked to find there is 1 player that I have drafted in every single league I've drafted. And I was shocked. I had no idea I'd been drafting him that often. And I guess where I'm getting him, I'm happy with it. That's Bryce Miller in Seattle. Had no idea I had him on every team so far.
nice. All right. Yeah, I got one. Just Robert Stevenson. He's the only guy I drafted in every round. Got a couple of guys that I only missed out in one, but Stevenson's the only one. I have him everywhere. It's hard if you play in these different formats. It's hard to hit that, right? It's like, because especially if you play in a Gladiator and then you also play in a DC or Fab League, they're just the Gladiator throws everything off because usually like that guy you draft in every league, you could just get in the late round. Like he's just your late round target and you want him everywhere. You want to see what he can do. The Gladiators throw that off. I'm not surprised that it's only one guy.
People talk about diversification if you're drafting multiple leagues, especially early rounds. In early rounds, your draft position dictates that, right? Sure. You're going to have a diversity of players that you're drafting in the early rounds, because unless you get the same draft spot in every league, it's just not possible.
Well, no, it's only if you get the first pick every round. Like, I mean, those top even 7 picks are they're gonna change based on whatever league you're in as well. So you don't always have that opportunity.
The last guy on the list I have in every league except one, but you had something to do with that.
Yeah, that was it's the only league I got him in too, except for my mock draft, which I don't really count. Of course, we're talking about Cole Reagans in Kansas City. I do think I'm underestimating how many innings he actually will put up, Kevin. But at the same time, he's still not hitting 200, just like everybody else on this list. I was surprised, based on everything we've seen, everything we've heard, that he's still only going to be projected. He's 43rd on this list in strikeouts, at 209 over 200 innings. Was that a surprising number to you? I expected it to be a little bit higher. If you could see Cole Reagan's actually getting to 200, not only from the talent level and the production that we saw, but also playing in that division, and then also play. And I know it's a little bit more balanced than it used to be, but there's still a little bit of weight to it. He's still going to play the Tigers a couple more times. He's still going to play everybody else in that Central Division a couple more times, except for the Royals. And just knowing that if there's something that's got to be said about, if you're actually going to hit 200, that means you've gotten a rhythm throughout the course of the season. That means you're healthy. That means you're going 6 innings into most games. It seems as though that has to play a factor. And I know mathematically maybe it doesn't. It's more like a mental game or a mental aspect of these projections that is hard to quantify. But it does seem like somebody like Reagan's, if they got into that kind of a rhythm, would be able to crank up the strikeout percentage a little bit more. Am I overthinking this, or what's your thoughts on Reagan's if he actually were to hit 200 innings?
I would agree with what you said. And Steamer actually has him getting close, over combining the minor leagues and his time in Major League Baseball. Last season, he did get up to over 120 innings. He had over 130 in 2022 across 3 levels. And so, and his appearances, throughout the years were, he started off not going deep into games early in the season, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and fumbling my words there, and built up. So Steamer only has him projected for 29 starts. So they're building in, about a 3 to 4 start IL stint probably. And I think you almost have to plan on that for almost everybody, but they haven't projected for near that 180 mark we've talked about. 186 strikeouts in those. So a couple of another start, maybe 2, a slight bump in the strikeout percentage. Would they have him projected at 24.5%? He was at 28.8, almost 29% last season. So yeah, absolutely. I think we can maybe not expect, but realistically look towards an upside of getting pretty well into the 200s for strikeouts on the season. Health, if he stays healthy, of course.
Yeah, it's one thing to look at the total innings that is being projected. It's another thing, as you just pointed out, to look at the game start or the games played even, and kind of do the math
they're
from there.
They're projecting them for over 6 innings per start. Game. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so that does that gives a little bit more credence to your assumption that they're kind of baking in an idea that he's going to be on the IL for, maybe once or twice in the season. Maybe they're minimum stays, maybe it's just one long stay. We'll see. But yeah, if you look at that number for somebody else, and you have many more starts, same amount of innings, then maybe it's more of a projection that this team is going to pull them a little bit earlier, or they're going to manipulate how many if they're going to get an opener or stuff like that. So it's something you have to really look at, and not just look at the total innings, and when you're looking at these projections as well. So that was a good call out there. I like that a lot. All right. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in the Steamer 600s. We look forward to seeing all the other projections kind of trickle their way out. I think Ariel announced that, Ariel Cohen, that is, announced that ATC's projections should be coming out next Thursday. So look forward to that. I'm sure the Bad and the Bad X will come out shortly after or before. They usually come out pretty close in time on an annual basis. But no announcement that I've seen, Kevin. That a lot of information still to come. Our PLV projections will be coming out with the update to Pitcher List. So you need to subscribe to the PL Pro or PL Plus to access those things as well. A lot of information still to unpack. Kevin, you've got some big shoes to fill of your own, where you got those champion leagues that you gotta make sure you're prepping for, because we want to make sure that we see you in that room next year. As if anybody's not aware, go join the NFBC Discord, and you'll learn all about what the Champions League is, and how to sign up for that. Which if you were going to play in all those leagues anyway, there's really no reason not to.
Exactly.
So there you go. Anything else you want to tack on at the end here, Kevin, as we continue to grind through January and get closer and closer to spring training?
This kind of builds on what we were looking at with Steamer 600. It can be a great way to do this. We talk about it quite a bit. I don't think this is anything that anybody doesn't know. As usual, a reminder: playing time is something to make sure you agree with the playing time, or have realistic reasons to change the playing time when we're looking at all these projections as more and more start to roll out. Great example. Mike Kurland put this out on Twitter not long ago when he posted the Kansas City Royals lineup. They have Michael Garcia hitting towards the bottom of the lineup, and that's probably not the case. He's probably the leadoff hitter. That is a huge jump in plate appearances. Also, they have him projected for 125 games. He's the everyday third baseman. He'll get a day off here and there, of course. I'm not saying he's going to play 160, but I'm saying he's probably going to play 140 plus rather than the 125 he's projected for. But between those two scenarios, hitting at the top of the lineup and the added games, this gets him to over 600 plate appearances rather than the 496 that he is projected for by Steamer. So this is the kind of thing. It's time consuming, but it's something to look at team by team. Because when you look at that Steamer 600, you'll notice it has everybody projected for the same amount of games to get to those 600 plate appearances. So if you're taking the spot in the lineup into consideration, if you're playing every day, the difference between hitting ninth and hitting first can be 150 plate appearances over the season. Quite a bit more than I think some people might realize. So definitely take a look at playing time when you're taking a look at all these projections as more and more roll out here over the next week or two.
Excellent. Good segue into kind of tying everything together, Kevin, as always. But that is going to wrap it up for episode 146 of On the Wire. You can follow myself on Twitter at 80grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin is at Hasting Kevin. Of course, follow the pod at On the Wire Pod. And after all that, I am Adam Howe. On behalf of Kevin Hasting, thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.
If you travel for work, you know to pack 2 suits. Business and swim. You know with your Delta SkyMiles Business Amex card, buying that plane ticket for a business trip can get you closer to medallion status. You know that a meeting in Montana means visiting almost every national park.
Yellowstone? Check.
Because you're the chief excursion officer. It's why you're a Delta SkyMiles Platinum Business American Express card member. If you travel, you know. Terms apply. Visit go.amex/business.
Hey friends, are you struggling to attract and retain top talent? If you're worried about recruiting and retention, consider Insperity, a leading HR provider. They'll help you improve hiring and compensation practices so you can spend more time growing your business and less time on HR. Visit Insperity.com and download their free ebook on how to build your dream team. Don't let a lack of talent hinder your success. See how Insperity provides HR that makes a difference at Insperity.com.
Hey parents, Greenlight is here to take one big thing off your to-do list, teaching your kids about money. With a Greenlight debit card and money app of their own, kids and teens learn to earn, save, and invest. You can send money instantly, set flexible controls, and get real-time notifications of your kids' money activity. set up chores, and put allowance on autopilot to reward them for their hard work. Then learn about the world of money together. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.